Hi there. In this video, I'm going to talk about a particular use case which I have personally struggled to find a solution for. The use case is how do you create a config map using Argo CD using external files. Now in Helm chart, as you may be aware, in templates you can read files, but the files has to reside within the Helm template itself. Within the Helm chart itself, you cannot read files which reside outside of the Helm chart. So you cannot really create a manifest within the Helm chart to create the config map. So let's see how we can use Argo CD to create a config map using external files. So for this, we are going to use something called as a config management plugins within Argo CD. So this plugin is a repo server component which is in charge of generating Kubernetes manifests from source files like Helm, OCI or a Git repository. Then Argo CD will take that manifest and apply it to the cluster and create the required resources. Let's see how do we install this plugin. So for registering this plugin, you need to register this as a sidecar to the Argo CD repo server itself. Now, when you install Argo CD using Helm chart, it creates a repo server pod. Now, we need to add a sidecar to this repo server, which will be the plugin itself. Now, the way to do this is in the values.yaml, we specify the plugin as another container here with a set of attributes. The image can be anything, and we'll come to that in a bit. So we can mount the plugin using volume mounts. So the important thing here is a config map. So if you see under volumes, there's a config map named my plugin config, and then the same config map is used under volume mounts to mount that plugin into a particular path. Now you may ask what this config map is. So if you scroll up, here is a sample template for the config map. This config map is the key to this config management plugin because this is what will generate the template that Argo CD is going to apply to the cluster. So in this sample example here, the config map is nothing but a file called plugin.yaml, and these are the contents of that file. The contents include a version, a init command, and a generate command, and an optional discover where you can go and discover a certain pattern of files that you want to work with. The generate command is the key here because this command is the one which is going to generate the manifest file, which Argo CD will then apply to the cluster. So let's go ahead and see what the config map would look like for the use case that we are trying to solve. So here is the config map that I have. The metadata name can be anything. So I have given here Argo CD CMP CM and the plugin.yaml file and its content. Under spec, the version I have given is v1.0. The init command is simply an echo saying initializing. Now the important thing is the generate command. So what I've used is here kubectl create cm, which is config map. Then the name of the config map. Will come to this name in a bit. Then create the config map from file, that's this flag, and the value is dot. This dot is nothing but the folder where the git path is pointing to, and again we'll see that in a moment. The next flag is the dry run equal to client. What this means is kubectl is not actually going to create this config map. It's a dry run kind of thing, and the -o YAML simply spits out the YAML manifest for this config map. So in essence, this whole kubectl command, create cm command, is not actually creating the config map. It will just print out the YAML file for the config map that we want to create using external files, and then Argo CD will take this manifest file and apply it to the cluster. That's when the config map will actually get created. So this is just generating, because this is part of a generate command, it just generates the YAML and hands it over to the Argo CD server. Now coming back to the name of the config map, right? So we are using here some values using $sign. So what does these mean, right? So Argo CD config map plugin, let me go to the documentation here. Yeah, as you see from the documentation here in your application, Argo CD application, this is just an example. So in the environment section, you can pass environment variables, and these environment variables would be made available to you prefixed by Argo CD underscore env underscore. So in our example, we are using dollar $argo cd env underscore cm underscore name. So this cm underscore name is the actual environment variable which is being passed to us, and we'll again take a look at that in a moment, what the value of this is. And the next is dollar param underscore cm underscore name underscore suffix. Now what is that? If you scroll down here, uh, Argo CD plugin allows you to pass parameters in addition to the environment variables. So here under plugin, so above we saw how we can pass an environment variable. Now under plugin we can pass parameters as well, with the name and the values for it. And the way Argo CD makes these parameters available is it takes the name and then prefixes it with param underscore and then the name of the parameter that we are passing. So for example, here the name of the parameter is some string param, but the way Argo CD will make it available to us is it prefixes it with parameter underscore and then caps all the name that is provided as part of the parameter. So some string param would be capitalized and this would be available as the parameter for us, and the value would be whatever is being passed. So again, we'll take a look at how we are passing these values in a moment. Now coming back to Argo CD values.yaml, which needs to be used while installing Argo CD itself. So here is the values.yaml that we are going to use. So under repo server, there's extra container. The name of the container would be cmp my plugin. The command is a standard Argo CD cmp server, so this would remain the same. The image we are using here is Bitnami kubectl. That's because as part of the command generate command, we want to run the kubectl command. So kubectl binary should be available within the image, so that it can generate the manifest and pass it on to Argo CD. So the volume mounts, volumes are similar what we saw from the documentation page. So let's go ahead and install Argo CD now using these values.yaml. So I'm going to follow the steps mentioned here and I'll add this in the description of the video as well. So first let's create a namespace called Argo CD where we'll be installing the Argo CD itself. So the namespace is created. Next, we'll create a namespace called apps where we would be deploying our application or the application set. So that's created as well. Next, we'll create the config map which we saw here with the generate command of kubectl create cm dry run client and -o yaml. So we'll create this config map because Argo CD needs this beforehand for the plugin to refer to this. So we'll go ahead and apply this config map. Note that it will be created in the namespace Argo CD because that's where the Argo CD we are going to install, and it will be able to refer to this config map. So the config map named Argo CD -cmp -cm is now created. So we'll go ahead and use this values.yaml to actually create the Argo CD installation. So the volumes, if you see the config map, it refers to the config map which we just created. The name matches with what we have specified in the values.yaml. So let's go ahead and install Argo CD itself. Now, if you see, we are using ArgoCD namespace here to install. We are using ArgoCD chart version 7.8.15 here, and the values we are pointing to the values YAML which we just saw. So let me go ahead and install this. So this will take a while, so I'll pause the video here and we'll come back when the installation finishes. Okay, the installation has just finished and it printed out this text here after the installation. So it gives you the step how to access the Argo CD UI. The first is, it says you can do a kubectl port forward on this service on port 8080, so that it will be available on your localhost dot colon 8080 on the URL. So let's copy this. Actually, first we have to run this kubectl command. Now, when you actually run localhost 8080 on your browser, will give you this connection because of the certificate. So just click on continue. Now it will ask you for a username and password. So if we see step here at the bottom, it says after reaching the UI for the first time, you can log in with the username called admin and the random password which is created, and the value of the password is the output of this command. So let me copy this command. Okay, let's stop this port forwarding for a while. Let's run this command. So here it printed this password. So this password will be different in your case when you install Argo CD. So let me port forward again. And now let me copy this password, go back to the browser. The username was admin and the password is what we just copied as the output of the command. So there you go. We are into the Argo CD UI and there's no application currently because we have not created any. So as a next step, we'll go ahead and create an application set. We'll also show you an example with an Argo CD application. Both are kind of similar, but you'll get a gist of how you can do this with both application set as well as application. So let's go ahead and create the application set. So this is the YAML for the application set that we are going to create. So here, if you see under spec sources, we have a repo URL. There is nothing but a github.com Argo project Argo CD example app. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this is that URL which is specified in the YAML and the path is given as guestbook. So whatever is under this path, it will use these manifests and create those resources in Argo CD. So this is one of the sources. Now there's another source here where we are actually going to use the plugin. So if you see the repo URL, it's the same as the above. But what we are going to tell Argo CD is, instead of just picking whatever YAMLs are present in this guestbook folder, we want to use the Configmap plugin to generate the manifest for us. So here the path we have given the same as guestbook, and the plugin we are registering here, the name is the name of my plugin dash the version that we want to use, right? This is important, the name, where it's the name of the plugin dash followed by the version. So the version we had given in our plugin is v1.0 and the name was my plugin, and that has to match here with the plugin name. Now we are passing environment variable as well as parameters. So the environment name is cm underscore name, and as we had discussed, right, Argo CD would make this cm name available as an environment variable prefixed with Argo CD underscore env underscore. So when we are referring using a dollar sign, this environment variable, all it will do is pass us the value here, my config map, which is part of this environment variable. Similarly, the parameter name is cm name suffix, which Argo CD makes available to us by prefixing param underscore and then the capitalized version of the parameter name that we are passing. So in this case, dollar param underscore cm underscore name underscore suffix value would be my suffix. So these are the two ways we can pass parameters or environment variables to our plugin. So let's go ahead and apply this and see how it reflects on the Argo CD UI. So since our port forwarding is on, so I'll open another tab and I have the application set YAML here. So I'll do, and let's see what the namespace is given. Okay, the namespace is Argo CD here, so we should be good. So I'll do kubectl apply -f and then the application set.yaml. So this is now created. So let's go to the Argo CD UI and see. So it's reflecting. So it has provided the guest book here. Now it's out of sync. So let's try to sync it. So it's syncing now. It has created the config map. It has created service. It has created the deploy. So everything looks good. Now let's try to analyze what all resources it created. If we again go back to our application set, if you remember in the sources, we had two sources. One is the repo, the GitHub repo URL with the path saying as guestbook. So whatever is under guestbook, it will deploy as it is. So it's a deployment and a service. So that's what we see here. SVC and the deploy, that's part of this source. And the second is we asked Argo CD to use this plugin to create. Now the plugin, what it did is it ran this kubectl create cm command and dash dash from file equal to dot. Now the dot in this case um, is the path that we gave here, which is guestbook. So what it will do is it will come to this path and it will see these two files. So it will run kubectl create config map dash dash from file and it will pick these two files and generate a config map out of it. So let's verify that. So if I click on this config map here and look at the live manifest. So here under data, you see the first config map entry is the guestbook UI development YAML and all its contents. And second is guestbook UI svc.yaml and then all its content. So this way we are creating a config map out of external files. So you can give any path to any GitHub repo, right? And under that path, whatever files are present, config map will be created out of those files. So that's what we are seeing it here. So now this was an application set. So let's go ahead and see how we can use application itself instead of application set. So application set YAML is here. So again, in the application set, we had used two sources to demo how we can use our plugin. Similar concept in the in the application YAML, I have two manifest. The first manifest is the simple source GitHub source URL having the path as guestbook. This is not using the plugin. And then there's another application template here which uses the same repo, GitHub repo Argo CD example apps with the path of guestbook. But in this case, we are going to register this plugin for this source. Similar to the application set. So let's go ahead and apply this and see how it reflects on the Argo CD UI. So as you see, we have this same YAML. So let me go ahead and apply this file. Also, one of the application named guestbook already existed as part of the previous one. Now it created a guestbook with plugin. So let's go ahead and check this. So if you see, okay, this is out of sync. So let me go ahead and sync it. So it's syncing, now it's healthy. So this application only creates a config map, because remember, now we had two applications here, one without the plugin and one application with plugin. So this is the one which is using the config map CMP plugin. So if we click on the config map and check the live manifest, again the same expected output. We have the guestbook UI deployment YAML and the contents of that, and there's another SVC YAML and the contents of that. So you could have any kind of file. In this example, I have the YAML, but then you can have your properties file, image file, a, a certificate file, whichever you want to have it as part of the config map, right? All you have to do is provide the GitHub URL, the path to the folder where the files exist, and then the plugin will do the rest. It will create the config map out of the files which are external. So that's all I had to demo as part of this video. I have included the links to the files which I have shown in this video in the description. If you have any questions, suggestions, please do comment on this video, and thanks for watching.